There is a secret key this week if you want to shift a certain situation in your life, be it personal or professional. I'm talking about all that and a lot more in this week's Mainly Moonology podcast. So this week, I am absolutely delighted to welcome back to the Mainly Moonology podcast the wonderful Cassandra Tyndall of CassandraTyndall.com.
.com, thank you.
And as soon as we had chatted a few weeks ago, I wrote to Cass and said, oh my God, I enjoyed that so much. Let's do it again soon. So we're doing it again soon. So thanks for being back here, Cass.
Thanks for asking me.
So for those of you who don't know, Cass is, I suppose, what you could call a consulting astrologer. She does lots of readings for people around the world. She does lots of talking at conferences. She has a members area. In fact, she has an astrology event coming up, which we'll talk about when we're done. And did you have something you wanted to say? I see you intaking breath there.
No, I'm just listening to this wonderful intro. Thank you.
Anyway, okay.
All the things.
So this week we are talking about really about some changing energies in the skies and also what we could call the post-Mercury retrograde cleanup. So Cass, why don't you give us a little rundown of how we came to the decision to make this the subject of our podcast this week?
Well, this week we have so much action happening with Mercury. So Mercury will form a trine aspect to Uranus, then it will oppose Neptune and trine Pluto. So that's kind of a lot of energy for Mercury, and then it will change signs from Virgo into Libra. And why I thought this might be a helpful cleanup for people is you might recall at the very end of July, Mercury moved into Virgo, and then the very end of July, Mercury moved into Virgo, and then very early August, Mercury then stationed retrograde, and then it retrograded back into Leo, then it came back into Virgo, and now it's just finally exiting Virgo. Yeah. So there might be whichever Virgo house, if you know what house your Virgo house is in your birth chart, you still may be thinking, oh, just got to do this, or I've just got to do that, or clean up things that may have first came to your attention in late July.
Yeah. So shall we run through the houses for people? So we'll
for sure.
So basically, ideally, if you know your rising sign, listen to that, because that's actually going to tell you far more than if you listen to your sun sign for reasons we won't go into right now. Okay, so if you are Aries rising, then this is all taking place in your sixth house, which is all about your daily life routines and also about your health.
And just so second chances and all of that stuff.
This is all about clearing up. Yeah, so you take us away with Taurus rising.
Yeah, for sure. So that's your fifth house. So it might be getting back to having some fun or more time with children or creative outlets.
And if you are Gemini rising, it's taking place in your fourth house of home and family. So it's where things could go more smoothly in your private life.
Yes, and if you have Cancer rising, this would be your third house. So the third house is often about similar to the sixth in the sense of daily routines and rituals, but one that also brings you pleasure or enjoyment. Might be some sibling drama with neighbors, and things like that might come to your attention this week as well.
Yeah, all working those dramas out.
Correct, yeah.
And also because it's about communications, it can be about finally having that conversation that you messed up before, having another go at it and finally getting it right, or just getting hold of somebody you've been trying to get hold of. Okay, so what about let's see, Leo rising? That's going to be in your second house. Now these guys have actually had the retrograde in their sign, so that's going to have affected them. So but Leo, for one thing, you're now getting a chance to smooth things out where there was a bit of Mercury retrograde confusion, but in particular it's about cash, property and possessions. So there's been confusion in that area. Now that can start to all make sense again.
Awesome. And so if you have Virgo rising, well, this is your first house. So this might be getting to know yourself a little bit better, or making some personal decisions that you've been grappling with for a little bit.
Excellent. And then if you are Libra rising, this change is taking place in your 12th house. And so really that could be about fears and getting past a fear. It can be about just unconscious stuff that's been like all mixed up in your head, finally like unraveling and being less, interfering with your daily life.
Yeah.
Can even mean you're going to sleep better, that you're not going to be up,
Yeah.
overthinking and so on and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. If you have Scorpio rising, this is your friends, your friendships, your groups of people, any communities that you're involved with, and your general sense of good luck and opportunity. So, as Mercury's now moving smoothly through this part of the sky for the most of this week, you might be able to sort of get some of those good luck vibes back into your life a little bit.
And then
Especially
if
if
you're
they
sorry,
yeah, if they involve something like having a conversation or making
yes.
plans and things like that.
Mercury things. So then we have Sagittarius rising, I believe. And so that's going to be your 10th house, which is career and ambition. So again, it's a case of, where there's been confusion to do with your career, now things can sort out. And as Cass says, yes, definitely about communication. In fact, for everybody, communication. So it could be conversation you need to have at work that you didn't get a chance to have earlier, perhaps. You can now have this conversation and things can go smoothly and you can start to make some plans, put down some ideas for your professional life.
Yeah. Capricorn, this will be your ninth house. So this is your big picture thing. So if you're studying or if you're going on holiday or if you're diving into topics of spirituality, religion, philosophy, those things can really get back on track as well for you.
Aquarius rising, it's your 8th house. Now, I know Cass is a fairly traditional astrologer, so I hope I'm not going to shock her when I say 8th house for me, sex and money, matters to do with sex and matters to do with money. Where there's been turmoil, now's the time to really talk things through, have some conversations about, your sex life if you need to, or your finances if you need to, and really you could actually get somewhere because Mercury, we'll go into it, but Mercury's making some good aspects as it moves forwards this week.
And if you're Pisces or Pisces rising, well, this is the chance to really have that conversation with a partner, whether that's a spouse, your main squeeze, someone at work, or a particular client. If there's been a reluctance to have a conversation, this is a great week to sort of nut out any issues you might need to.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now let's talk, Cass, a little bit about the aspects that Mercury is making as it goes forwards through the last degrees of Virgo this week, ahead of moving into Libra. So we've got Mercury trine Uranus on the 24th. We've got Mercury opposite Neptune on the 25th. Then we've got Mercury trining Pluto on the 26th, ahead of the move into Libra on the 26th as well. So, I mean, for me, when I see that, what I think is, communication is key this week. When Mercury is so prominent as it is this week, there's actually no other aspects taking place on those days. And there's no other planetary aspects taking on those days. So for me, when I see that, I think, okay, so this is really a week for conversations, communication, exchanges, messages, anything like that. And I'm just going to say, Cass, when we were talking before we started today, Cass was saying, we could talk about it as a Mercury retrograde cleanup. And I'm just she's touched on that already, but I'm just going to go into a bit more because I think she's really right there. So basically, in the part of your chart that we've just been talking about, that is partially where Mercury was retrograde at the beginning of the retrograde cycle we've just come out of. And now Mercury going forwards, the reason why Cass sort of framed it as a cleanup, I would say, is because it's like we've had the retrograde and now we get the forwards motion and it's still the same part of your chart that's being highlighted. And because they are positive aspects, it really can mean things are going to work out in a way, that might even surprise you because maybe things were very, discombobulated under the retrograde. But because it's making these quite powerful alignments to Uranus, the planet that changes everything, Neptune, the planet of dreams, and although also of confusion, and Pluto, the planet of transformation. So there really is an opportunity to do a post-retrograde clear up, especially in the part of your chart that we've been talking about. What do you think, Cass?
Yeah, for sure. I've been looking at these series of aspects, and I love a good Mercury Uranus aspect because it can be very clarifying, that aha moment, that light bulb moment, or if you've been struggling with something throughout the retrograde, this is your eureka moment to innovate, or a brand new idea. If you've had a writer's block or something of that nature, this
Yep.
is really, really helpful to just really open the mind, open lines of communication, and really get some movement going. Mercury
Yeah.
and Uranus are really helpful as a planetary pair. Then I
Yeah.
think
And also, can I
Wednesday,
can I just add, with
yeah.
Mercury Uranus, I think you're right. I actually, I've got Mercury Uranus in my chart, and I do love a good Mercury Uranus aspect. It's also like a time where, one conversation really can change everything. If you
Hmm.
if you have something on your mind, or something that's been sort of bugging you or plaguing you or haunting you or whatever, it really is a week to think, well, maybe I'm just going to have that darn conversation, or I'm going to write
Mm,
that email, I'm going to send that message, because so often in life, we worry about what should we say? Should we say this? Should we say that? Maybe it's not right. Maybe, I should just keep my counsel, or maybe they don't want to hear from me, or whatever. And it's a time when it really could pay you hugely to have that conversation or send that message. And it could really shift things. Like Uranus has got this very strong energy. I love to think of it, since we sort of got this word in the English language in the last few years, disruption, disruptor. I like to think of Uranus as the disruptor planet. And so it can really, it's like it comes along and it shakes the bars that have been trapping you, and they actually break and you can get out. It's very much the liberation planet. So, and Mercury being the communications planet, when you put them together like they are this week, it can be you have that conversation or send that message. I keep saying both because it doesn't have to be talking. It can be writing. It can even be thinking. It can be,
mm.
the way you're framing things. But it's really a week to think, okay, I want an exchange of ideas. I want to talk about this. I want to say my piece. And it's not an explosive aspect. If Mercury was squaring, clashing with Uranus, it might be a little bit more like, well, mind how you go. But this is a week to say, you know what? Say what you feel, mean what you say, and it really can just cause a breakthrough. Breakthroughs can happen. Am I being too hyperbolic there? I think it really is especially post the retrograde. I do think that's all really applicable.
It's a bit exciting. I can imagine this in the sense of, say, for example, you're trying to buy or sell a property, and then you get that call from your agent and they say, oh, we've got a buyer or what have you. And so
Yeah.
there's that moment of excitement, there's
And shift.
movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Uranus, the disruption, it's agitating, it's generating movement. So then there's this excitement. Then the
Yeah.
following day, we get into the Neptune, and that might be the
Yeah.
confusion or
Which
the
is okay, I
overwhelm.
think. I think it's okay, because when I saw that, I thought, oh, does that mean, yeah, because I think it's okay because of what happens next.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, whenever I see Mercury and Neptune together, these two planets are very contraindicated to each other. Mercury likes clarity, facts and figures, whereas Neptune's kind of la la land. So it feels very almost a little bit of a Mercury retrograde. So if you have this eureka moment the day before, everything feels really great. And then the next day it's like, can I really do that? Will that really happen to me? Will I really get the the price I want for the house, if that's the analogy we're going with? So it can feel a little bit dazed and confused, or it might be, oh my, I feel so overwhelmed with all the things I now have to do. It's got that sort of feeling to it. But I think because, as you said, the next day we do have the Mercury trine Pluto, that's a money signature, Mercury and Pluto together, or that breakthrough in the sense, or that ease and flow of wealth or contracts or exchange of money, or powerful conversations or intense conversations that we might normally shy away from. But because it's a trine aspect, it can be the conversation that brings you and somebody else a little closer together. The bit of truth, trust, and loyalty through your words or whatever it is that you say, which would be really, really beneficial as then Mercury slips into Libra, that sign of relationship and togetherness and balance and harmony. I've jumped ahead a bit there, but
Yeah, but that's okay. People who know
that's
astrology will be, interested to hear that. I just want to follow up on two things you said, Cass. Number one, talking about selling your house, because I know there'll be so many people out there who listen who are trying to sell their house. And I just want to add one thing. Just Cass, you know this. I'm not telling you anything. I'm just telling anyone who's listening. It is a time where you could get that phone call. But if you don't get that phone call, it's also a time where you could make that call. So you are the one who maybe makes things happen by calling the agent and saying, you know what, we need to do this. We need to drop the price. We need new photos. We need this. We need that, whatever. It's about communication. So don't listen to this and think, oh, great, I'm going to sell my house this week. I've been trying to sell it for 6 months and it won't sell. It may well
yeah,
be that, as Cass says, it may well be. But if that's not happening, it's also a really good time for you to do the communicating. Do we agree on that?
totally. Yeah,
Yeah. And
for
the other
sure.
thing I wanted to say was to also give another perspective on Mercury, Neptune. And what Cass said is completely right, because it can be confusing, even a bit like the retrograde, as she said. My way of dealing with Mercury, Neptune is always a great day to meditate. So,
Yeah,
get into your spiritual self, get into your higher self. Neptune's the planet of the divine, it's the planet of the numinous. And so Mercury is the mind. So to chant or meditate, do anything like that, it will be a good way to mitigate any possible, confusion that Cass mentioned. And then, yeah, Pluto, in a way, Pluto that bookends these three things. It is beautiful because Pluto represents the life, death, and rebirth cycle. And you could almost say that we've gone from the Mercury Uranus, there's a change. We've got then Mercury Neptune, could go either way, could be confusing, or it could be a time where you sort of tune in. And then the outcome seems to be, in this case, if we break the week down as though it's a separate entity from the following week, it should be fine. It can be a good outcome. There can be really powerful transformation. Yeah, it's like the work you do when Mercury is connecting with Uranus pays off by the time we get to the Mercury Pluto. Okay, great. Thanks, Cass. Can we also, one thing I said to you before we started, and I'd love to ask you this, what is your take on the last quarter moon? Because we are the mainly Moonology podcast. What do you see? What do you see when you look at the last quarter moon coming up?
yeah, it's interesting. I like the flow of the lunation cycles at the moment because we kick off the month with a new moon. And then by the time we're getting to the end of the month, we're getting to the end of the moon cycle. So the third quarter moon feels like to me a time to get busy. It's that time to tie up all the loose ends at the end of the month. It's the time to figure out, what have I done? What have I not achieved? What have I not done? And start to kind of get a little bit of a forward momentum before that light level of the moon starts to get lower. Now, because she's in Cancer when this takes place, this gives the moon even more of a boost, more strength, more capacity to do this. So I sort of think that, in the shadow of all of this Mercury stuff, it's a really good time to take action. The moon in Cancer, it's a cardinal sign, very action orientated, wants to agitate things and get things moving. So if you're feeling a little bit, oh, gee, it's now the end of September and this hasn't happened or that hasn't happened, then as you were saying before, Yasmin, do make the call, do send the text or write the email or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
otherwise you're then staring down the barrel of October and then, it's another month
Before
down
we
the
know it, it's
line, right?
2025.
Correct. Yeah. So that would be my take on that. What would be
Yeah.
yours?
So a couple of things. One is that I'm just looking at solar fire right now, and
Mhm.
actually there's a pretty interesting grand trine, I believe.
Between Venus, Jupiter, and the moon. Is that what you're talking
I'm
about?
looking at Mercury, Pluto, and Uranus.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting, which is basically a very flow kind of energy. So there is this flow. Even though, you know, the quarter moon, for those people who don't know, takes place when the sun and the moon are at what we call a hard angle to each other. And in this case, it's in the sun's in Libra and the moon is in Cancer. So, you know, it can be a time of a bit of conflict, and very much like what Cass was saying about, you know, oh my God, I've got to do something about this. It could well be about that. And it could well be to do with home and family or relationships because of the signs that the sun and the moon are in at this time. But again, I do think overall, even though the quarter moon can be a time where you know, it can be a bit of a challenging time. I think because of the grand trine that's going on and because we're in the waning cycle, very much a time to do those last things, tick off the to-do list, and then try and give yourself some time out because we're going to be then going into the dark moon, ahead of the new
Correct.
moon. So I think this week, you know, try and, you know, sort out. I think there's a lot of relationship energy around because the sun's now moved into Libra. So all those conversations, it can be a personal relationship, can be a professional relationship, but yeah, really do that clear up on all levels if you can. So Miss Cass, I think we've covered it. What I would
Yeah.
also like to ask you about, though, is I know you have something coming up very soon, which you want to tell everyone about, which is, I think, is it a workshop you're holding in Australia? Tell us about it, because anyone who wants to get an astrology reading, Cass is your girl. She's amazing. But I
Oh,
believe you
thank
have an
you.
event coming up as well. So tell us.
Yeah, so if you're in Brisbane, like I am, or you're keen to get to Brisbane, I am currently promoting a workshop that I'm holding on the 9th and 10th of November, and it's all going to be about the astrology of 2025 and how you can plan and prepare with the planetary energies coming into play for next year, where they're going to be in your chart and what planets are going to be most important in your chart and all of that stuff. So 2025 is a very, very big year. And so I'm getting a little bit ahead of the curve doing this in November. So you've got plenty of time to wrap your head around all of that. So all of those details will be available on my website. You can find out more, register. And yeah, I'm going to be limiting it to a certain number of people. So if you can get on
I was
board,
wondering how
that will
many
be
people, because if you're going
amazing.
to be doing one-on-one a bit, how many people do you think you're going to have in there?
Probably no more than 20.
Okay. So would it be outrageous of me to say, actually, speaking of the astrology of 2025, maybe I should give you some of these, Cass, to sell at your workshop? The
You should.
Moonology diary and the desk calendar. I'm sure we can speak to Hay House about getting some of those to you. And
Yeah.
you can sell them in your shop if you have a shop at your workshop. But yeah, so I mean, let's talk to Hay House. You never know what they'll say.
Let's do it. It's always nice to find your things in the shops, Yasmin, when I'm visiting different places.
Oh, thank you. And let's just wrap up for those people who are still here listening. Let's just wrap up. You know, you say it's going to be a good year for 2025. Let's just give people a little taster of why you say that.
Oh, why do I think this is going to be good? Because we're
Not that I
going to get,
disagree. I just think it'd be
oh,
interesting for people to hear it.
okay. Well, for one thing, at least from June, we're going to have Jupiter in Cancer. Okay. And so Jupiter is the benefic planet, like our best planet, and it's going to be in its best sign, which
And
is
we're both
Cancer.
Cancerians, just by the
And we're
way.
both Cancer. Yeah.
So especially good
um,
if you're Cancerian.
yeah, or have planets in Cancer. I mean, we all
Yeah.
have Cancer somewhere, but
Yeah.
Jupiter rules Sagittarius, Jupiter rules Pisces, but in Cancer, Jupiter is said to be exalted. So we're getting the best of the best that Jupiter has to offer. And of course, this journey only comes around every 12 years.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of this year, we have a Mars retrograde in Cancer. Starts in Leo, goes back into Cancer. So that's going to be a little bit crispy for some of us, having Mars grinding through Cancer. But just as that cycle winds up, just a short time later, Jupiter then comes through with the blessings. So we really do have that light at the end of the tunnel as we sort of get to the end of 2024 into 2025, and we're thinking, oh gee, and then it's like, it's okay, Jupiter is going to come through and give us our rewards, blessings, and bonuses.
And just explain again briefly how this will be addressed in your workshop for people who are in Brisbane or want to be in Brisbane for your workshop.
For sure.
Give us the date again.
It will be the 9th and 10th of November. So what you'll learn about this cycle is personally where it is in your birth chart. If Jupiter is your profected planet for the year, so you'll learn about your age and which houses are going to be the most important. And we'll just have a touch on that 12 months of Jupiter goodness in one particular area of life. And because I'm doing this in November, but before we get into this real crispy part of Mars retrograde in Cancer, which is why I'm doing it as early as I can, we can kind of wrap our heads around what we're coming into and what's going to happen with Jupiter in Cancer. So I think it's going to be a really, really lovely transit and well overdue.
And we'll put a link in the description below, but just for people who are listening to the podcast, give them your website address again where they can book a ticket.
It's my name, CassandraTyndall.com. So you'll find the details right there at the top.
TyndaLL.com.
That's me.
All right. Well, Cass, thank you so much for being here. I love having you here. I really enjoy our chats. I'll attempt not to invite you back again too soon, but you know me, I'm not very restrained. Thank you so much. And everybody have a great week. And just remember to communicate. That's the secret this week.
Say the thing.
Say the thing. Exactly. I love that.